Okay, folks, welcome to Level-Headed Marketing. We have Mr. Thom Craver with us. And the topic today is something that probably nobody's heard anything about in the last few days, if they were living in the crypt, and that is the famous not provided. Okay, uh, Not provided appeared a couple of years ago in 2011, in October, I believe, of 2011. Some results, search queries started showing up in analytics as not provided. And it created a little bit of a fervor then. A lot of people complained, what good does this do me? And it was claimed originally to be probably the 2 or 3% of sites that would be affected, well, I should say queries that would be affected. And it almost immediately showed closer to 9 and 10% for a lot of sites and has gradually crept up. Uh, for myself, one of my sites was showing 86% about 3 weeks ago. All of a sudden, a few days ago, Google suddenly decided shifting everybody to an HTTPS, which means that anybody, whether they're logged into Google or not, if they come to you from Google, they will show as not provided. You cannot see that keyword term in your analytics. Well, Thom is an analyst at heart by nature, always has been, and he's been digging into this thing. And he attracted my attention the other day with, first of all, a post on Search Engine Watch, and then an excellent one on his own blog. And I'll drop the links for that into the Google Plus page on the LHM page. But made some very, very interesting points. So I chased him and I stalked him real quick and tracked him down and invited him to jump on with very short notice, for which I'm very appreciative. And now I'm going to introduce Mr. Thom Craver, who is a SEO and analytics strategist. He is an adjunct professor at it's Rochester
Institute of Technology.
Rochester Institute of Technology.
Yep.
One sharp cookie when it comes to analytics. This is the kind of guy you want to listen to. He's been there, done that, and knows how it works. So, Thom, thank you very much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thanks for your kind words, Doc.
Now, first of all, we've been hearing a lot of whining the last few days. It's all of a sudden everything is invisible to us. SEO is dead. I can no longer do my job. Let's start right with the bloodletting. What's your take on that?
I can't do my job. I think you mentioned it once before to me in the post that I wrote. If you can't do your job based on this whole not provided situation coming out, then you need to find a new job. I've been having this argument for 2 days now with various people some of whom I really highly respect, others who I don't know from Adam. But it's so you kind of hit the nail on the head. When Google introduced encrypted search, it basically hid the keywords and didn't pass them on to the site owners. Site owners look at their analytics, and instead of seeing the words people used in Google to find them, they're seeing not provided, this mythical not provided. And if you use other analytics services, Adobe's or Web Trends or whoever, you see similar results. Not provided, not allowed, keyword not there, all kinds of weird phrases. And so I mean, there's a bunch of different questions here, and so we'll start with what you said. I can't do my job. Well, the data is still sitting there in Google Webmaster Tools, and you should be using that. You should be using Bing's too as well, but that's another story altogether. If I'm a marketer and I'm doing some SEO type activities, which is basically adding keywords, changing copy on the page, doing all kinds of stuff, and we're pretty much talking about the on-page stuff when you're talking about keywords being important, right? So, or even some link building, but still. You're talking about changing the page copy to throw certain words that you're targeting. Well, you're only going to target certain words on certain pages. You should know, first of all, which pages you're targeting and which words you're using for that. You should be tracking that somewhere in a spreadsheet or in some kind of event tracking or workflow tracking software, because you should be doing that. Secondly, if you're looking at just strictly visits to your site through Google Analytics through a keyword, that's not happening either. You're going to lose all the bots. You're going to lose all of the automated anythings that crawl because they don't execute JavaScript. Analytics only works when JavaScript runs. So if you hit a redirect or if you hit something and you don't run JavaScript, even if the page is drawn, no one's going to see that. No one's going to know what's going on there. Google Webmaster Tools, on the other hand, it shows you all kinds of information. It shows you not just how many visits and click-throughs you've had from search, but it also shows you how many times you appeared in search that people didn't click on you. And I think that data is just as valuable, if not more valuable, than, oh, I had X number of visits in my analytics software from this keyword. So I mean, there's all kinds of things you can measure. Besides, there's a plethora of third-party tools out there. I won't drop names in this one, but there's just a ton of tools that do very similar things and track your position. And essentially, all they do really is search for whatever keyword you tell it to for your domain and let it go. And the loss of this in analytics is like saying a commercial airliner lost an engine. They have 4 other ones purposefully to do that, or radio. I sat, and I don't know if people realize this. I sat in a plane one time. They said they had a radio problem. They had to get it fixed. They had 4 other radios, but they needed 5 by FCC rules to fly, or some such weird thing. It's one piece. You have backup plans. You have things in place, or you should. And if you're relying on one set of tools, then you're really not good at your job.
Yeah, that pretty much puts it in a nutshell, I think. I and I have not used the keyword out of a GA for tracking with any confidence for a long time, because when Not Provided first showed up, my gut just told me, they're probably experimenting, they're playing around, they're fine-tuning an algorithm, whatever. As they so often do, they test the waters.
Right.
I felt like it's probable that this is going to continue to increase. I thought initially when Matt said 2 or 3%, I said, yeah, right. And it didn't take but about 2 days to see that wasn't going to be the case.
Yeah, that jumped right up.
And I assumed that it was probably going to eventually hit 100%. I wish I'd really been wrong on that, because I know that there are people out there depending upon this, and there are people that will have a hard time compensating for its loss. But it doesn't surprise me. What surprises me more than anything is that there are so many people out there, people that had supposed credibility in the SEO industry, that are saying they can no longer do their job.
Well, and that's just it. I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I've had that conversation. People are like, well, don't you find that information useful? Of course, I found it 3 years ago to be dead useful, and it was great. But when that started creeping up, and they did it slowly, it started becoming less and less valuable. When they first introduced the encrypted search, it was actually on encrypted.google.com, and then they moved it over to mainstream, and then it was just Then it was just if you were logged in, that you'd get redirected to SSL, right? SSL.google.com. Or HTTPS Google.com, and then of course it was, well, now we're going to make it the default in Firefox and in Chrome and then everything else, and all of a sudden this was the last step. This is everybody else who doesn't log in and aren't the Google fanboys and whatnot. But you got to keep in mind, the whole time they had people like anybody who used Android for search, and Google's the default search on that. I mean, everywhere you look, Google Now is now in play, and that has to be encrypted and everything else. So I mean, it was obvious, if you are in the SEO industry and you claim that you're doing SEO stuff and that's your job, then you should have seen this coming. You really should have, and you should have been finding new ways to adapt as it's got from 2-3% to 10% to 20. It was in 25% for most industries. By like the 3rd or 4th month when they really introduced it for logged-in users. Search Engine Watch had an article, I don't know, about a month and a half ago, that talked about how for certain industries it was already near 70% before they flipped the switch. So I mean, and you had to see it coming. You just had to see it coming. You had to find other means of getting your data, plain and simple.
Well, the other thing that's kind of surprised me too. I mean, Danny Sullivan had put up a piece the other day on Search Engine Land that referenced several times how this was such a sudden thing. I mean, to my eyes, it's been a very gradual thing over a couple of years. I just don't see the suddenness there. Even if you did fail to see the signs or didn't believe it would ever happen, certainly the creep should have been noticeable.
Well, it was, and creep is a good word. It kind of just snuck right up. It just creeped right up along the way. But there were numerous websites. I honestly, I hadn't seen that he said it was a shocker. All of a sudden, flip the switch. I had actually seen it as, I've seen articles on his site before that had said, look, it's really high. Look, it's getting higher. Everybody and their uncle, in the industry called out Matt Cutts, who and I can't blame Matt Cutts. He was just echoing the message that was given to him, but his message he said was this should never really see more than double digits percentage wise. So basically, he said we're going to stop at 9%, 9.99% maybe even, and it broke that 2 weeks later. I mean, it just truly did. So it didn't just. The only thing that flipped the switch automatically was Google made it default for every search for everybody. And some people are saying, well, I can still get to HTTP, Google.com. I haven't checked today. I did a lot of data, a lot of research with different Google, IP addresses and various things, and every one that I tested. And I did multiple browsers, logged in, logged out. I used curl for anybody who's familiar with using curl for, scripting purposes. I used curl trying to get every single one redirected to HTTPS. So they pretty much just eventually, and maybe that was the shocker, flip the switch on all the rest. That's pretty much the shocker moment, if you will. But no, this was coming far off since it was actually October 2010 when they first announced it.
Oh, yeah. Well, I don't know. To me, like I say, for me and the sites that I handle, it's not going to be a biggie because I've been trying to find a way to work without this information for some time because I felt like this was going to happen. And so I don't understand. First of all, one of the things that I have a real problem with is everybody's attacking Google because they're saying this security concern is all smoke and mirrors. And while Google is guilty of a lot of things, I don't particularly see any untruthfulness in this. It does provide some security because of what is personally identifiable information. The fact that, saying that this is only done to increase ad sales, I don't buy into. Does it have that benefit for Google?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. It's going to push a lot of people. It's going to push the people that don't think they can get keywords anywhere except with AdWords. So it's going to have that added benefit.
Point is really a stretch, though, Doc, right? Because you could subscribe to AdWords all day long, not spend a dime, and still have access to the tools.
True. Yeah.
So I don't actually see. I just don't see that argument. I truly don't. Everybody says, well, the data's still out there in AdWords. The data is out there in AdWords for research purposes. When you create your campaigns, you set what keywords you want, whether it's the ones right from their list or not. You set different match types. You set all kinds of information. And you still don't see what people typed in exactly in terms of sales and conversions and everything else. And I think this is the more key point as we get into, right, is the IP address and everything else that they took out of analytics. The idea is that Google doesn't want you, and whether it's searches or otherwise, they don't want you to personally identify who people are. They just unrolled, Google Analytics just unrolled, it was a multi-channel attribution modeling tool. And it was supposed to, first touch, last touch, somebody who converted on your website, did they get there in multiple visits? If they did, was it the last visit that made them convert? Was it the first visit from social or wherever you might have seen it? So there's a whole modeling tool. And I talked to them at great length, and I had about a 40-minute interview with a couple of the product managers at Google Analytics talking about this because I was covering it for Search Engine Watch. And I said to them, so how is this different than Eloqua or Marketo or one of those types of services where we can actually track down individual buyers? And they said, oh, no. You cannot track individual people with any of these tools, and we've taken that out. And case in point, you can't see an IP address. You can barely see the provider of the internet service nowadays. So to track anything down to an individual user, whether it's based on keywords or whether it's anything in analytics for that matter, they're just not allowing that because they want to keep people's data private, or at least, again, that's the front they're putting up there, as the Google Maps car drives around and steals people's Wi-Fi passwords. But that's another story altogether.
Yeah, that's a different session.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a very important point because Google gets attacked for a lot of things, and perhaps some of them are deserved, but in this particular instance, I think that there is both a moral imperative and a legal imperative from their standpoint that they protect that information. They've been raked over the coals in the European Union.
Yep.
And they can see that slowly but surely migrating to North America.
They've already been questioned here on our soil as far as
it's just plain common sense from their standpoint.
Absolutely.
Plus the fact that I personally, and this is just my personal feeling, I have a pretty good confidence level that Google really does want to protect our privacy even without that. Okay, even without any legal imperative at all.
Right.
I have a high confidence level there. Now that's me. You know, maybe somebody wants to throw rocks at that or thinks they've seen evidence to the contrary. I have not.